Hello. To begin, I would like to just point out some key elements of what the judge just spoke to us all about. To remind the jury of some key points, because I think that it is so important for you guys to know them, but even more than that, I recognize that the judge is saying so much at once that it might be really easy to become overwhelmed and for you guys not to catch these key points. Firstly, Lester Nagard is presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. Therefore, my job today is not to convince you of his innocence, but instead to give you facts as to why he is innocent. He has not lost his innocence because he had to enter into this courtroom today. Continuing on, in order for Mr. Nagard to be guilty of conspiracy, he has to engage in all four of the elements the judge has presented, and attempt requires for Mr. Nagard to have intended to commit the crime in the first place. And similar to conspiracy, in order for him to be guilty of armed robbery, his actions must fit into all the elements presented by the judge. But one element that I would ask the jury to remember that he clearly does not fit into is that Nagard has to have exercised or obtained control over the property owned by Pilot that day. So we've sat in this courtroom and we've listened to all of these different sides of the story today, and I'm deeply troubled because in the midst of that, I feel as if the jury may have not heard about who Lester Nagard is all on his own, with the case or without the case. You see, his wife, Pearl, sat on the witness stand today, and I think she gave us glimpses into his character, as well as who Lester desires to be, the kind of man he is striving to be. And so I just want to take a moment to point out those facts. Lester Nagard is a provider. He loves to hunt. Lester, from the way that his wife spoke about it, enjoys being outdoors, probably more than he enjoys being indoors. And going even a step further, that is his safe space. And I am convinced today, as I stand before you, of the character of this man, because when I hear that somebody so willingly gave up their rifle, so willingly sold it in order to provide for somebody other than himself, I can't help but to think that why would Mr. Nagard do something so selfish? Something that could challenge the safety of his family that he's working so hard to provide for. You see, as I listened to the prosecution's argument today, I was compelled to reread Miss Peggy Bloomquist's statement, because I felt like that was what the prosecution was building their entire defense on. And as I read their entire case, that was what I was reminded of even. You see, they are going off of one key statement that Peggy believes that she heard, and it has been proven that testimonial evidence can vary, that it's not always reliable. And so I am bothered by the fact that the only key element that the prosecution has for us today is that she believes that she heard Lester say, "Okay, let's knock over Pilot." Now you see, she wasn't a part of the conversation. She wasn't invested in the conversation. They didn't invite her into the conversation. Therefore, there's no way for us to truly know what their conversation was about. And maybe they did speak about Pilate during that conversation, but how do we know that that is actually what they were saying, or if that's what they intended by their statement that day? And then we assess Officer Given's statement of how he approached the car and he saw the rifle on his lap, and it doesn't contradict the defense's statement that Lester was borrowing his cousin's rifle. And why, we ask, was he borrowing a rifle in the first place? Well, for somebody who loves to hunt and he sold his rifle, it would make sense for him to be borrowing a rifle. He wasn't pointing it at anybody. He hadn't left the car. It was simply sitting in his lap. And so yes, perhaps the defense is guilty of illegally being in possession of a gun that isn't registered to him, but does that automatically mean that he becomes guilty of conspiracy and armed robbery or attempted armed robbery today? And then we look at the note left for Pearl. It reads, "Pearl, gone to take care of some of our money problems. Be back real soon. Lester." So Pearl reported to us that Lester was up for a job. Lester, who is proven to be a provider, Lester, who is proven to be sacrificial, unselfish in his motives, was up for a job. But simply by sitting in a car with a gun on his lap, he loses everything. A man who is already in financial bondage, somebody who is already struggling to make ends meet, fighting for his family, to provide for them. And the court is leaning on one statement: okay, let's knock over Pilate. Jury, today I compel you to not be satisfied with putting an innocent man behind bars simply because it's convenient. Today I ask that you push for more, that you do not remain silent in the fact that there's insufficient evidence against my client. And also I ask that you would look and examine yourselves and ask if you're okay with putting an innocent man behind bars. A man who is simply out with his cousin in the wrong place at the wrong time. Thank you.